Well, John, one of the things that I'm picking up here is between Family Renewal Project, Theology of the Body, and all of this, it seems that family and theology of the body are figure very, very large in your
Yes.
story. So maybe, if you don't mind, let's kind of go back to the beginning and see how that came to play out in your life. And as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about the fact that the four of us all have a little bit of a different story. Two of us, Eric and myself, are converts. Brian is a revert. And you, I think, are the only member that was born and remained a Catholic, from day one up until now.
Somehow.
So, yeah, miracles of grace,
Yes.
I'm assuming. So maybe you could speak to that. What role did faith play in your early childhood, in your family? Were your family very, active in the faith? Was it more of a nominal Catholic upbringing? Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about those early days and the role of faith.
Sure. I think a lot of my faith came directly from my immediate family in the form of my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister, and also my grandma, my dad's mom. She was particularly involved in my life to the point where, in fact, the very day that I got the phone call that I was receiving full funding to the TOB Institute, 3 hours later, we found out my grandma had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she was gone 30 days later. It was so fast we couldn't even tell people. And a month after her death and burial, I was attending my first course at the Theology of the Body Institute. So I have to couch this synthesis of healing, I guess. At least maybe this is part one. There's so much more than we could possibly do in a single episode of time. But I have to couch that in the context of going to the Theology of the Body Institute was really immersing myself in the beautiful language of John Paul II, his thought on what it means to be human, and how that plays into our experience, our personal lived experience in our families and our friends on a daily basis. And by immersing myself, it actually helped me connect the dots of my past so that I could actually literally discover my story, so that I could even be capable of sharing it, And why I say this is because my grandma played such an intense role early on, because when I was a kid, she was the director of religious education in my parish.
What was your parish, by the
St.
way?
Luke.
Okay.
St. Luke Catholic Church in Okolona, very small parish, neighborhood-based. And I remember she had been principal at Guardian Angels there on Preston Highway by the airport.
Sure.
And she moved down there closer to home when she transitioned. And from there my parents started going to church a lot more often. And from there, our parish started going through a lot. In 1993, the year my grandma started as DRE, the school actually closed. And that was, a wound, a pain for that parish. We had just received a new pastor at that same time. And so they were kind of reevaluating the mission of the parish, the purpose of why would God allow this to happen? And I think that can be related to many of what many places might be feeling in the culture today. But back then, it was a fresh wound, And so by 1995, the Archdiocese was actually going through a lot of organizational things. And they slated about 6 or 7 parishes to close at that time, and St. Luke was one of them. And so the parishioners literally petitioned the neighborhood, had a huge archdiocesan hearing. And again, this is stuff that I absorbed as a kid.
Right.
I
How
wasn't
old were you
involved
at this time?
3, 4, 5 years old.
Okay, the early memories.
And I very, very vaguely remember some of the intense emotions. I don't really remember what people said or did. I wasn't at anything, obviously, but I remember the emotion about it, the intense passion people had. And the big slogan back then was unity in the community, right? This desire to band together through tough times. Well, we were actually given approval to remain open, and that I considered a miracle in many ways, especially when so many others closed.
Right.
Shortly after that, a year and a half later, the parish burned down.
Wow.
fire actually started in the confessional in the middle of the night, January 17th, 1997. I'll never
Somebody got
forget
struck
the
by
date.
lightning in the confessional.
Yeah, in fact, right. Well, I think of the fire starting in a confessional is very spiritually symbolic.
Yeah, there's a
powerful.
lot to be said there, I think.
Right, but the parish essentially lost everything.
Wow.
And it was a devastating experience. And witnessing and looking at my parish home as reduced to nothing but ashes, dust, and just the First Communion pictures. The Eucharist was preserved. The old wooden cross was still there.
So like the actual Eucharist, you mean like in the tabernacle?
Yes, the Eucharist was still preserved in the tabernacle. It's profound, even though the pedestal the tabernacle sat on was gone. So it's spiritually symbolic of the strength of the faith, that the faith is not just a building, but it's the people. It's the encounter with Christ. So unity in the community, I think, over those years started to give way to unity in the Eucharist, because that's all we had left.
Right.
The Eucharist and each other. And so Mass was celebrated on the grounds of the old church. And the Knights of Columbus Rental Hall, our sister parish, St. Rita, actually allowed us to use during that time. And again, I'm 7, 8, 9, 10 years old now, absorbing all of this, just deep sense of belonging, sense of community. And I felt a great camaraderie with my parents because they were directly involved. My mom at this time had a powerful conversion and ended up getting involved in a Catholic rock band. It was a spin-off to our choir. I know it sounds crazy to say that. My mom was in a Catholic rock band, everyone. It was great.
All this rockers.
Yeah, right. Terrible. But my aunt joined soon after that, so it became very familial. Many other parishioners.
Joined the parish or the rock band?
Joined the rock band, actually, I was referring to. That's so funny.